The U.S. is pushing for Australia to join in missile defense drills involving South Korea and Japan, aimed at shooting down potential North Korean missiles. According to the Sydney Morning Herald, a leading U.S. congressman has put forward a bill earmarking $15 million for joint exercises between the four countries next year. The Australian government is not believed to have got an official invitation yet, but it would mean another key ally would be brought into the fold in the region's defense against North Korea. Pyongyang has previously threatened Australia with a nuclear strike if it continued to, quote, blindly follow the U.S.
China has urged for prudence following what the U.S. military called a successful interception of a mock intercontinental ballistic missile on Tuesday. Beijing's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying told reporters on Wednesday that China has a clear and consistent stance on missile defense. She called for all relevant parties to act with caution so there are no adverse impacts on regional and global security and stability.
Hatches opened, a blast of flame, and the Caliber cruise missiles arced through the eastern Mediterranean's blue skies. The beginning of their journey, the Russians say, to wreak destruction on ISIL targets near Palmyra. Such sophisticated weaponry is expensive and used rarely in Syria, generally when Russia has a point to prove to the West.
Well, they want to show that they have some weapons which can strike from long distances, from the Navy vessels, from their submarines. And that is a kind of a deterrent that Russia can use. You know, okay, we cannot outspend you, we cannot defeat you at the battleground, but we have something that can punish you if you attack us.
It's notable Russia's cruise missiles were launched a day after the US displayed missile capabilities of its own. Now that US test is widely believed to be a response to North Korea's recent missile launches. But Moscow has long voiced objections to the global positioning of US missile defense systems. The US, Turkey and Israel were warned in advance about Russia's cruise missile strikes. That served the dual purpose of keeping information channels with the region's power brokers open and reminding them Russia has sophisticated missile weaponry it's willing to use unilaterally.
Russia has built a hypersonic missile capable of destroying an aircraft carrier with a single impact, it has been reported. Kremlin chiefs claim to have constructed a Zircon cruise missile which travels between 3,800 mph and 4,600 mph, 5 to 6 times the speed of sound. Experts warn the unstoppable projectiles could spell disaster for the Navy's new £6.2 billion aircraft carriers, the HMS Queen Elizabeth and HMS Prince of Wales.
Well, meanwhile, in an interview with a French newspaper, President Putin said that it is those who lost elections in the US who are continuing to play the anti-Russia card.
The US president is steering a traditional US policy. Of course, we remember that during his election campaign, and also after he was elected and assumed office, President Trump spoke about his intention to normalize the relationship with Russia, and said that it cannot be any worse. We remember this. However, we also see and realize that the political situation in the United States is influenced by those who have lost the elections but refuse to accept their defeat, and who continue to use the anti-Russia card and various allegations most actively in the political infighting.
Putin went on to say that it's not just Trump who said that he wants to improve relations with Russia. In fact, NATO officials have adopted a similar rhetoric. However, he pointed out there seems to be an inner contradiction of this NATO policy of, on one hand, saying that they want to improve relations with Moscow, but on the other, increasing their military spending. He described this as a short-sighted policy for NATO officials to invent a fictional threat from Russia instead of tackling this common security threat of terrorism.
Russia is expelling 2 Estonian diplomats. They have been told they have to leave within 5 days.
As a response to Estonia expelling 2 Russian diplomats last week from the city of Narva. Now, Estonia did this without any explanation. The initial version was that supposedly the Russians were sent out because of some espionage, but that was later debunked. And today, the Russian Foreign Ministry released a statement condemning this move. Let's take a listen.
The destructive path of Estonia's authorities will affect bilateral ties with Russia. Tallinn is responsible for consequences.
Now, we've seen a similar story unfold with Moldova recently too, haven't we?
Oh, yes. Came quite a bit of a surprise from Moldova, with 5 Russian diplomats getting on the booted list. And now to give you a little background, Moldova used to be part of the Soviet Union. Today, it has a pro-EU parliament and a pro-Russia president. Now, Russia was quick to respond this time, mirroring the Moldovan move, with Moldovan diplomats having to leave Russia actually today.
The meeting, the conference where these globalists all come together and meet in secret, and they have confidentiality agreements to ensure that everybody there is going to keep it under wraps, keep their discussions under wraps. This is going down in Chantilly, Virginia, between June 1st and June 4th, and we will be providing coverage of that. Now, there were some concerning people that are attending this event. It actually says some of the notable U.S. attendees are Trump administration National Security Advisor General H.R. McMaster. I mean, that's a little concerning. Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, tech billionaire Peter Thiel, and even ex-CIA Director David Petraeus. I mean, this is going to be really crazy. And their agendas that they have. I mean, we have the Trump administration progress report, transatlantic relations, transatlantic defense alliance, even why is populism growing? The war on information. They should have just said, we're going to be talking about how we can take down info wars, because that's exactly what it sounds like. They're talking about Russia in the international order.
Elon Musk says that universal basic income, or an economic idea where everyone gets a paycheck from the government to spend how they wish, is one of the only solutions to the rise of robotic automation. Most plans for universal basic income start by suggesting a tax on robots. The goal here is to replace revenue lost from the mass numbers of unemployed and keep it coming in from the bots. Plus, this is still a net gain for businesses. They get money flowing into pockets so people can keep spending, and even conservative estimates suggest that robots will be able to pay for themselves dozens of times over. So companies won't really be losing any money there either.
A universal basic income is something usually championed by socialists and other friends of John DeVore, but recently some tech leaders have also been pushing the idea, which involves the government giving all citizens a certain amount of money to cover the basic things like food and housing. And this week, Tesla chief Elon Musk said a UBI is going to be necessary in the future because automation will lead to extremely high unemployment. Or as he put it, there will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better. Musk believes that self-driving vehicles alone will lead to 12 to 15% unemployment within 20 years.
This is exciting stuff, and I think as we get ready for not only drones in the air, get ready for autonomous vehicles, this is our future, and this is how we're going to become a more efficient 21st century nation, society, quite frankly.
We're doing it completely legal. We have just very, very short deliveries from the drone where we have a safe takeoff location, and the landing area is a drone dispatch team members who's receiving the box of donuts.
Amazon is not accepting the sky as a limitation. Issued by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, a recent patent regarding Amazon delivery depicts a shipping label fitted with built-in parachutes. The idea is that the shipping label would house a series of cords, a parachute, a breakaway cover, and a harness to keep everything in place. The patent also depicts several sensors to make sure the delivery is landing in the correct area, as well as a shock absorber to keep the package secure both when the parachute is deployed and just in case it ends up coming to Earth with a force more akin to a hailstone than a snowflake.
In contests between humans and machines, humans keep losing. But at least we're getting something out of our defeats. Google's AlphaGo, the artificial intelligence designed to play the strategy game Go, recently beat the top-ranked player. It also beat a team of 5 world-class Go players by itself. The victory is historic for AI because AlphaGo is programmed to teach itself the game instead of working from a defined set of commands. It's now retired from competitions to focus on other tasks like finding cures for diseases. IBM's Watson followed a similar path. It defeated the longest winning streak holder in Jeopardy history and then entered the medical field. It's already diagnosed a woman with a rare form of cancer that doctors couldn't identify. There's also an artificial intelligence that plays Texas Hold'em. It outplayed 4 professional poker players by about $1.75 million in chips. Its technology is expected to be harnessed in fields where negotiating with misinformation can be a benefit, like in military strategy or business negotiations. Forget the boarding pass. A selfie is all you'll need to board an airplane in the future. JetBlue will be the first airline to team up with U.S. Customs and Border Protection to test biometric facial recognition technology at its gates. Here's how it will work. Passengers will be photographed prior to boarding. Those photos will be run against the CBP's database of passport, visa, and immigration photos. Once the system confirms a passenger's identity, he or she can board the plane. The trial will start in June with JetBlue flights from Boston to Aruba. For now, passengers will have to opt in to use the technology. They'll also still need a copy of their boarding pass to get through the airport's security line. CBP agents have already been using the same technology to verify the identities of passengers entering the U.S. The agency deletes the passengers' pictures after the verification process, unless it, quote, determines that further administrative or enforcement actions are necessary. British Airways is already using this kind of facial recognition technology for boarding in London's Heathrow Airport.
Foreign ministers of more than 20 member countries of the Organization of American States are meeting today in Washington, D.C. to discuss the crisis in Venezuela. Among the goals of the meeting is to establish a contact group to help bring back the Venezuelan government and opposition to the negotiating table. Nicolas Maduro's government has declined participation in the meeting and denounced the OAS's action as an effort to intervene in the sovereignty of the South American nation. All this as protesters remain in the streets of Caracas and other cities of the country now for 60 days. As clashes and violence continues, the death toll has reached more than 60 victims on both sides of the political divide.
Goldman Sachs is being heavily criticized for giving Venezuela's government close to $1 billion. The investment bank used the money to buy bonds in Venezuela's state-owned oil and gas company. It may have been a good deal on Goldman's part. It got $3 billion worth of bonds for about a third of the price. But the transaction itself is controversial. Many allege the bank is propping up a dictator. A large majority of the country opposes President Nicolas Maduro. He's been accused of trying to grab power from other branches of government. And in recent months, forces loyal to him have killed several protesters. One of the country's main opposition leaders said Goldman's deal will strengthen the brutal repression unleashed against the hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans peacefully protesting. On the other hand, Venezuela desperately needs cash. The socialist government controls the economy, and the country's lack of money has had serious effects on its people. For example, the government controls wheat imports to make bread. Because funds are so low, it's only been importing a quarter of the wheat the country needs. Venezuela's food shortage has been so bad, the average citizen has lost 19 pounds in the past year. Maduro's government has denied a humanitarian crisis exists.
It's crazy actually. It's really crazy in Iraq. Because since the first day I stepped my feet in Iraq, every day there was a bombing. As soon as I reached in Iraq, I called my mom. I said, Mom, I'm in Iraq. She said, oh, what? I said, I'm in Iraq. No, you're kidding. I said, no, Mom, I'm not kidding.
We were briefed on Peruvian and Colombian guards. At the time was about $1,000 to $1,200. And then 6 months, a year ago, it became Ugandan guards at about $800 a month. Now, on this most recent trip, the company that is winning all the awards said, well, we've got a good strategy. We're using Sierra Leoneans. And so what are we paying for them? It's about $250 a month.
If you're looking for young men to perform military jobs, the chances are quite good that they have also been child soldiers.
You need to shoot your parent. That can show you that you have the mind to shoot another person. If not that, every day you remember, you will think that I have killed my father, I have killed my mother. Who next again I cannot kill?
When the blood was in Iraq, that time I remember. So this is the war. And this is what happened in Sierra Leone. This is not good, but because of money.
British police have admitted that the Manchester bomber was known to them, but not for having extremist views.
According to the police in Manchester, Abedi was only known to them for minor offences. Take a listen.
What I do know about Abedi, the terrorist, is that he was known to the police for some relatively minor matters: theft, receiving stolen goods, minor assault. Those were in 2012.
All the information that the British government had on Abedi is now being scrutinised because there are concerns that the security services may have missed some of the warning signs that Abedi would go on to commit such a horrific crime. There have also been claims that the FBI had warned MI5 in January of this year that Abedi was planning an attack here on British soil and that he was part of a North African IS cell.
So, in other news, now this is actually a little bit more infuriating here. Migrants were caught stealing flowers and stuffed toys from the Manchester bombing site's memorial. I don't know if this is just because they didn't know what it was, but it was pretty obvious, it was pretty apparent that this was a memorial for that attack. So, I mean, that just goes to show more of the cultural clash that we're seeing. A Manchester man got very offended and angry and told them to put it back. They did put the stuffed toys and the flowers back. So yeah, it's just more to show the cultural clash.
Oregon Governor Kate Brown has signed a bill that will make it easier for transgender people in Oregon to shield any updates they make to their birth certificates. The process is typically conducted through the court system without privacy from public view. The measure will take effect next year, and it makes Oregon the second state after California to adopt laws designed to help mitigate potential discrimination against transgender individuals. The law also allows court cases involving gender identity changes on birth records to be sealed.
Well, the family history website Ancestry.com is making headlines for its terms and conditions, and what it says may shock you.
Ancestry.com is selling a new DNA testing service called Ancestry DNA. For $100, you send in a sample of your saliva, and the company sends it back to you with information about your genetic makeup. But now the company is under fire after recent revelations that its terms and conditions included a clause for the right to grant Ancestry a perpetual license to keep and use your DNA. However, in a blog post titled "Setting the Record Straight, Ancestry and Your DNA," it states that the company does not claim ownership of one's data and the owner has the right to terminate their profile at any time. But Joel Winston, a privacy law attorney here in New York, was one of the first to review the documents, and he says that the company is simply playing word games and that customers should know that by turning in their data means that they are giving up their genetic privacy.
They don't have absolute ownership to your DNA because it's in your body, so they haven't reached out and taken it away from you. You still own you, but they own a license to take your data, to hold your data, and to sell that data. Whether it's worthless or valuable, nobody really knows, but they are selling it and they have the right to continue to sell it.
Winston added that the company could sell one's DNA to pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, and profit research institutions. And by agreeing to such terms and conditions, your DNA could possibly be used against you or a genetic relative.
So the information that you provide about yourself can also provide additional information about other relatives. And this has been used before in the life insurance industry and in the law enforcement industry where it's permissible.
Ohio has been hit hard by the opioid epidemic, and now it wants to hold drug companies responsible. Ohio's Attorney General Mike DeWine filed suit against 5 drug companies he says are responsible for the drug addiction crisis because they misled consumers. DeWine said the drug makers, quote, led prescribers to believe opioids were not addictive, that addiction was an easy thing to overcome, or that addiction could actually be treated by taking even more opioids. They knew they were wrong, but they did it anyway, and they continue to do it. But the companies are disputing that they're responsible for the problem. A Janssen Pharmaceutical spokeswoman said the company, quote, acted appropriately, responsibly, and in the best interest of our patients regarding our opioid pain medications. People who take prescription painkillers can get addicted, and some turn to drugs like heroin when their prescriptions run out. More than 4,000 people reportedly died from opioid overdoses in Ohio in 2016.
Kathy Griffin in that image. President Trump's responding right now. The president did tweet moments ago, Kathy Griffin should be ashamed of herself. My children, especially my 11-year-old son Barron, are having a hard time with this. Sick.
The Secret Service had a strong reaction, telling ABC News, we don't have the luxury of knowing a person's intent. Each alleged or perceived threat has to be investigated thoroughly. Griffin seemed to know she was stirring the pot. Here she is after the shoot.
We have to move to Mexico today because we're going to go to prison. Federal prison. I sincerely apologize. I am just now seeing the reaction of these images. I'm a comic. I crossed the line. I moved the line. Then I cross it. I went way too far.
The guy in the purple cap and gown is having the worst day ever. He was on his way to his graduation from nursing school when the train came to a complete halt. And there it sat, stalled for the next 2 hours. No way was he going to make it to the ceremony on time. That's when a buddy has a brilliant idea. He scribbled his own diploma on his iPhone. Certificate of a good job. You're a nurse now. Maybe. Fellow passenger Nadia Afzal recorded the impromptu ceremony.
We were all clapping for him, and he had like a little speaker with him, was playing a typical graduation song, and it was a nice moment.
Everyone joined in. Lots of hugs, kisses, and handshakes. The graduate, Jarek Marco Alcantara, was proud of his diploma. Want a copy of my diploma? And what's a graduation ceremony without photos? Here's Jarek with his parents and his girlfriend. Lesson learned, just make the best of a bad situation.